Good afternoon, everyone. Warm welcome to Health and Wellbeing meeting today, Worcestershire. So thank you for your time, and we have got a busy agenda, but we'll try to keep on time. And I'll just ask Kate to advise us on the apologies and fill in the gaps. Thank you.
Yes, we've had apologies from Vic Allison, but we have Jen Taylor with us. We've had apologies from Julian Burlett, but we have Sarah Speck. Also apologies from Mark Fitton, Adam Johnston, Chris Rogers, Eleanor Round, Simon Trickett and Shirley Webb. Thank you.
Thank you. Any declarations of interest to be made, please? I guess none. Any public participation we have today? No. Okay. So we just go to confirmation of minutes from the last meeting we had on 18th of December, where we discussed about safeguarding adult board and children's partnership. Any comments or anything to be brought forward? Or we can go ahead and sign those minutes. Okay, happy with that. So we'll do that. Thank you. So next item on the agenda is about public health support to NHS, strategic commissioning and neighbourhood health. So we've got Prof. Lisa McNally to present that, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not going to take too long on this because it might not be the most thrilling of papers. Well, I think it is, but you might not. So public health obviously has very close collaboration with NHS colleagues, ICB, provider trusts, and of course the primary care sector. There's been a lot going on in the NHS at the moment. Recently, I don't need to tell you about that. We've got reforms in terms of the new strategic commissioning role of ICBs, which colleagues such as David are living and breathing every day and sorting out. And we've also got the national initiative that is neighbourhood health, which is all about bringing care closer to communities. And in delivering these two big major changes, it's important that our NHS colleagues are provided with the support they need in terms of public health. So this paper really sets out the current offer from public health to NHS colleagues. But I wouldn't want other people in the room to think that this offer doesn't apply to them as well. And I would include voluntary sector, social care and districts and any other partners in the system who feel that we could help with their work. I have developed with colleagues a set of 3 domains, which we've also, this has been taken up nationally, which is quite good. So Worcestershire is very much leading the way in terms of defining a new revised offer of public health to the NHS and beyond. The 3 domains of support are as follows. The first one is data and analytics. Often we're viewed as the geeks, the data geeks of the system, a badge we wear proudly. Or is it nerds? I'm not sure which is best, one of the two. And we can provide support with obviously quantitative data. We've worked with primary care, we've worked with, in fact, every sector of the NHS in recent months, looking at data, things like risk stratification, population segmentation, ways of allowing clinical colleagues to get a better view of where their demand is, where their opportunities are in terms of focusing care and resources. We also provide data in a more qualitative sense. So in the appendix, you will see an example of a neighbourhood profile. In this day and age of neighbourhood health, it's very important that we zoom in into our neighbourhood. So Elizabeth and colleagues have done a lot of great work creating these visualizations. And we've met with a number of primary care networks already, and feedback is they're very pleased with them. They give the PCN and primary care colleagues a snapshot of their area with data that they might not necessarily hold themselves. So data on things like housing tenure or social care use or levels of disability. And in fact, we do co-produce these with primary care networks. So we offer a first draft, but PCNs are able to shape what we offer them. And that's what I hope this will continue to be, not just public health saying, here's what we can do, but as co-producing with our colleagues what we offer. So that is the, and of course we have a very expert research and intelligence team led by Matt, Fong and Cam, who can take bespoke requests for data. And we do that. We get regular requests. Have you got data on this? And could you cut it for us like that? And again, that applies to all of you. Voluntary sector elected members often come to us for data as well, which is great. The second domain is health improvement. And this is about public health commission services that can help our residents better manage their health, thus placing less demand on health and care services, as well as, more importantly than that, improving their own quality of life. And you're very familiar with the health improvement services we offer. So, for example, our flagship programme, I suppose, is Healthy Worcestershire, which is an integrated health improvement programme. Many of you in this room have been absolutely instrumental in shaping that and driving it forward, so thank you. But we also offer a whole range of other services. Stop smoking, weight management, substance misuse, physical activity programs, domestic abuse support, and of course all the services that we provide for children, including our family hubs. So they are all on offer, and we've produced a very simple web resource for clinicians or indeed anyone to quickly find the service that would be right for their patient or their client and refer, usually via a quick online form. In that resource, we've stripped away all the stuff that clinicians might not need. You know, we don't need to tell a GP why his or her patient would benefit from quitting smoking, so we get right to the point. So that page is designed for professionals to quickly navigate and refer their patients or their clients to our health improvement services. And again, we can tailor our services. So, you know, we've had conversations with the PCN recently about upping the promotion of certain services into certain parts of their area because they feel there's a particular need for that service in that area. Equally, NHS colleagues and others can join in with our Healthy Worcestershire service and get information out to their patients through that service. So we have an open invite out to PCNs and other professionals to either come along to a Healthy Worcestershire service to talk about something they want to raise awareness of, or have our Healthy Worcestershire team deliver that content for them, whatever works for you. And the third domain is our favourite one, community development. This is about places as much as it is about people. So, as you know, we have a fine tradition now in community development within Worcestershire. And again, we've been working with primary care networks and others to engage them and involve them in the direction of our community development work. And this is about, of course, getting residents involved in shaping their own health and well-being in their own area. It's about transferring not just resources to residents, but also investing trust in them to know what's best for their area, what their area needs to improve health. So there are the three domains. What I recommend we do as next steps now is NHS colleagues have another look at it. You'll have seen drafts, etc. of this as we go along. But what would be nice, I think, is if we can eventually end up with an MOU, a Memorandum of Understanding, which sets out exactly how you want us to support you. And we'd also be interested in feedback from any agency, including voluntary sector and social care. And that's my spiel, Chair.
Thank you, Lisa, for this presentation. And I think this is quite detailed, what you have explained here in this paper, not only about the role of public health, what they've been doing, but how integral part it's playing, not only in delivering the services or co-designing community, but how vital it is for delivery of NHS and all those aspirations which we want to go for 10 years, and then we want to reduce demand and we want to achieve improved health. And it's really not possible without the work of public health, because we go from the very level of the community engagement all the way up to DHC. So thank you for that. And there's a lot of work gone in here to also explain that, we've had the award and how it's impacting, what are the outcomes. All those good examples are there as well. Thank you. Any comments or questions on this, please? Yes.
Yes, Chris, voluntary sector. I just really I was delighted to see this paper because I love working with the public health team. Not sure they love working with me, but I love working with them. Every time I speak to one of Lisa's team, I come away with 3 more things I think I could do. And alongside that, we know the big agenda to move health local, get it digital, and to get into prevention. And every time I speak with NHS colleagues, it's that latter one that is terrifying them. They don't know who to speak to. They haven't got the headspace to work out, I want to do it, but I'm not sure how to do it. And to me, this is the key bridge. It becomes the go-to. If you've got an issue and you want to take it somewhere, but you're not sure how to do it, touch base with public health, because they will know who you need to speak to. So delighted to see this. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Lisa. I just wanted to express gratitude for the offer as much as anything else. The concept of strategic commissioning is referenced in quite a few of the papers you'll receive today. And one of the big things about strategic commissioning is particularly insight and intelligence to inform data-led decision-making. ICBs, as you'll know, are going through quite significant changes at the moment, reductions in workforce size. Any offer of support to help us be better at strategic commissioning is universally welcome. So thank you, very much accepted. Look forward to working with you on the MOU.
So I think I'll just come down to the final point which you have mentioned about MOU. So any action points you would like to suggest for us for next meetings or?
Yeah, so I will touch base with David initially, and also our clinical directors, because they are absolutely crucial to this, because this offer extends to the cluster and the ICB, in which case, of course, we'll need to coordinate with my opposite numbers in Herefordshire, Coventry and Warwickshire, and I'm in touch obviously with those directors quite regularly. So I'll touch base with David, but also with our clinical directors to make sure that more local offer is fit for purpose. And indeed, we've already started that work. Tanya, I don't know whether you want to just provide a bit of a summary of our conversations with PCNs to date, what sort of things PCNs have been saying and how they've helped shape what we're doing, just briefly.
Thanks, Lisa. Tanya Richardson, consultant in public health at the council. So we've been working very closely with the PCNs, Neil in particular. We have been to the regular general practice meetings to articulate this offer, and also via the neighbourhood health working, and particularly supporting them on the delivery of their neighbourhood health frameworks, where they have been asked to work particularly with priority neighbourhoods within those areas. I was with Neil and his team last week, and we were further exploring and sharing the profile, one of the examples that is in there, about the sort of things, the sort of issues that were affecting people living in those priority neighbourhoods, and helping to understand what might be affecting the way that they access services, or what might the barriers be, and so on. So I would say it's a work in progress. It's building a really strong relationship. We've offered to all the PCNs that opportunity to come and meet with us, and to make sure that we can tailor the support that we're giving to those PCNs. We're also, of course, working with other NHS colleagues in the room. And so, for example, Matt, who isn't here today, ran a workshop with one of Ellen's teams, I think the mental health team, last week or the week before, on population health management. Some really tangible outcomes, I think, coming from that work, Ellen, about next steps and how things might want to change. And then working very closely with Sarah and acute colleagues about that move from hospital to community. So we're here to support and to build those bridges. And I think, as Chris said, we often find ourselves bridging those gaps and helping to translate. And then we bring our district colleagues with us as well. And so Jen and I have had lots of conversations, really helpful conversations too, in this space. So, yeah.
Thank you, Tanya. Yeah.
Hi, thanks. Jen Taylor, Malvern Hills and Wychavon District Councils. I was just going to come in and Tanya said exactly what I was going to say, which was that from a district council perspective, certainly what I'm experiencing, particularly in the last 6 months or so, is that that role that public health are playing, and you're playing fantastically, of bridging, of facilitating, of bringing partners together. So I would probably further your last point about community engagement as also that you are playing that bridging role and facilitation role within the system community, if that makes sense as well. And that's been particularly appreciated at a district level.
Thank you both. And so, yeah, and that offer, of course, extends. We'll keep doing that. Thank you, Jen. Just a reminder, the offer extends to voluntary sector as well. There may be a voluntary sector organisation that is putting a funding bid in, for example, and needs some data to back up their case. So
I did literally do that, didn't I? I whizzed Lisa I probably shouldn't say this because everybody will start it. I whizzed Lisa an email saying, oh, we're looking at gambling. Is there an issue? And next thing I know, 3 of your team are throwing data at me from all sorts of things. A bid has gone in. We don't know if we're going to get it, but it was just lovely to be able to get that. So that's what I mean about the enthusiasm. It's just amazing in that team.
yeah, that's the problem with asking public health for data. You will get it. You will really get it. And yeah, so we will work with colleagues to refine the MOU and get it all signed up, but we'll keep it open as well. New things will come along that will change what ICB, PCNs or anyone needs, so we'll keep it flexible, we'll keep it live, and we'll keep revisiting it.
Any other comments? Yes, Neil. Thank you.
Yeah, Neil Bramble, primary care member. It's been brilliant actually working with public health. There's always this thing, if you don't know what you don't know, and every time I meet Tanya I realise I seem to not know very much in a reassuring way, but trying to define the barriers to accessing healthcare that are just not contained within primary care records, for example, or hospital records. I think we're slightly held back by the population health management tool, which is still coming in development, but by having these really close open working relationships, it means that we can be very reactive, and the fact that at primary care level, PCN level, I think we're small enough to be able to be reactive to change pretty quickly, but big enough to be able to enact that across the whole population. So it's a great working relationship. I'm very much enjoying it and looking forward to it.
Thank you, Neil. That's really useful. And all the other comments, really, really useful. And thank you for your support on that. So moving forward on the agenda, we have update on priority neighbourhood development. And we've got Elizabeth Griffiths and Inspector Richard Field from West Mercia Police is also here to give us some update. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. I would completely echo Lisa's statement that this is our favourite piece to work on, our favourite work area. It's the most exciting and it is the one that generates the most stories of benefit that just really warm your heart. So I've been asked to talk about priority neighbourhood development and in particular our place-based partnerships that we have been setting up. And really this area of work was born from the thought that if we focused our limited resources in the areas that really need them, will we make more of a step change? Will we make more of a difference for those people and communities that are living there? And so Matt Fung's team has developed some methodology that we can identify these areas of the most unmet need. So with some really fancy maths that just got all of us data geeks very excited. And essentially these areas that have been identified have something more than just chance that makes them have such high levels of need. And so therefore our process, our way of working in priority neighbourhood development is essentially asking two questions. It's what's driving that inequality? And then can we address that inequality by targeting our resources, focusing our work, working in partnership, working, co-producing with communities to work towards that dedicated action? So you can see here on the scene, I've got 4 areas. So one of those is identifying those priority areas. The next is identifying what gaps and support is required in those areas. I will go on in future slides to talk to you more about what that work looks like. The next big thing is addressing those gaps. So there's no point having a whole load of data and information and doing nothing with it. A lot of what we're doing is about bolstering the assets in the local level, understanding what that local need is and where we can, putting in money to be able to support that for as long as possible and sustain those benefits for as long as possible. And then finally, it wouldn't be public health without evaluating impact, auditing that, understanding and refining our approach and feeding that back into our evidence base. So the next time round, we're more informed, we're more focused, and we're able to support a wider range of people. So, a little more then about the PND approach. What I would say is of the 14 areas that have been identified as the highest unmet need, each area has a slightly different approach depending on what community partners are there, what assets are in the local area, what the community need is, what the infrastructure is. And so, although the detail may be slightly different for each of these things, our process is essentially the same. So, first of all, we're driven by evidence. That community insight can cover a wide range of evidence sources. So some of that is our health data. It might be service data. It might be data that's come through from our district colleagues about what services are being provided to people. It might be some outcomes framework or information that's collected nationally or through our census, for example. But also that evidence comes through from talking and engaging with residents, really understanding what is affecting the people themselves, the things that might be creating a barrier for them to be able to come forward or participate or access care. We're also talking to a wide range of voluntary sector partners, community partners, service providers and businesses in those local areas to really understand the what, putting the evidence around the what. When we are engaging with our communities, we're essentially asking, what are the key health and wellbeing issues? It's as broad as that. What are the issues in the community and what are the barriers that people are experiencing, and how can we better overcome those barriers, target resources, and what grants and opportunities for investment are there at this really hyper-local level. The next bit is about the who, so identifying those community drivers, and they can be organisations that I've mentioned, our service deliveries, any local champions, members of the public as well. And with that, we are creating and developing a place-based partnership, so a group of people that are passionate about the local area who are coming together and deciding or presenting the evidence about what is that need looks like, but also deciding where that money goes. So where can we invest? What grants are required? What people and services are there? How can we fill those gaps and make the benefit as great as we can possibly get it in those local areas? And all of that is being co-produced with our residents at that local level. And then finally, it's that kind of focus of the resources that are available. So really trying to make the most of our collective resource, whether that's monetary or passion or people, and harness that so that we can work together to be able to move forward and make improvements at that local level. So in terms of our place-based partnerships, there are a number of different things that are really happening at this local level. And of course, my computer's turned off, but that's fine. So essentially, our place-based partnerships are facilitating those relationships. And Jen Taylor and Chris have already mentioned that kind of role that public health has started to take on about being the facilitator for these conversations, translating what some of that might mean from one organisation to another organisation, seeing where there is an opportunity in that local area. And those relationships span a wide range of people, so police, schools, housing, PCNs, communities, and we're all working with an equal partnership at that place-based level. In terms of unlocking community assets, I would say this is a real key role for the place-based partnerships that are happening currently. So it's that local understanding and tacit knowledge of the local area. What assets are there? If there's no building where people can meet collectively within a community, that's quite a hindrance and a barrier to being able to access care, bring people together. And so by identifying and knowing that local area, we're able to identify where we can put the money in to bolster that. So, for example, one of our place-based partnerships, there was no area for co-locating a number of different services, and so we were able to grant fund a voluntary sector organisation with outreach opportunities and also some money to address building issues. And now we've got a number of different services located and able to deliver to that real key community in need. We've got other assets in local areas that we can unlock, such as library outreach. So that's another way that we can get to people that aren't necessarily coming forward. And by identifying who those groups of people are, we can tailor the kind of collective resources we already have, but perhaps don't make the connection that they can go and do general health and wellbeing work. And then I've already mentioned co-location of services. The next one is around engagement, co-production and development. One of the quite novel approaches that has been piloted in the Wyre Forest area is around good practice mentors, where we're actually talking and training up people and staff about how they can have that door-to-door conversation. How can we engage those people that don't come forward from who are isolated essentially, and how can we bring them in on the conversation? So that's also happening in Droitwich, Ombersley, in the rurals as well. And all of this work supports our NHS colleagues on their neighbourhood plans. And then essentially the last role of the place-based partnerships is that optimising resource. We can only spend the money once, so let's spend it where it's needed. Sitting next to me is Inspector Richfield, who is the chair of our Woodrow Place Partnership. So I'm just going to hand over to Rich so he can tell us how he's enjoying it.
Thank you, Liz, and thank you, Chair, for the invite today. For those that don't or haven't been to Redditch, please come. It's a fantastic place. Woodrow sits within a traditional estate. It has a chip shop, it has a convenience store, it has a pub, and it's got a fantastic hairdresser. Not that I've used that myself. So it's got lots going for it. Woodrow, over a number of years, has struggled with its identity. And what I mean by that, it's known as woodrot. People that live there are scum. And that came out really clear from the community when we did that engagement. And these are really strong words, but what the outside people feel about Woodrow. However, it has a really good, vibrant community spirit. And I'm going to do something I don't normally do and share some points that came out during these sessions around what people felt in that room. The first one, it says, in Redditch, they are very hot for suicide. Obviously, the mental health hospital has shut down, so anyone with mental health issues or they're struggling has to go to Worcester, which isn't easy to access when you don't drive. There's a real problem with isolation. I also think there's a great community spirit here, but there's certain disconnect. The services don't want to come to see us in Woodrow. We have lots of drug addicts. We have loads of places where there's drugs, but these people can't receive the support they need. Sometimes I walk past, I get a bit scared because all the people are taking drugs and I feel really anxious and nervous, which impacts me, my anxiety levels and my mental health. And during that forum, I was struck by an area with a disconnect and distrust of all services, from GPs, mental health services, policing and statutory agencies. And I said something really brave on that day, which I'm going to repeat. Last year, a young boy died called Leighton Cole. He stole a motorbike with his friends. He undid the petrol cap and the petrol was sloshing round. So we decided to put some rag in the petrol where the petrol was contained. He then had a significant road traffic collision with a car and he burnt alive. And this is a young boy with the rest of his life ahead of him. What followed was a significant level of violence in Woodrow. People carrying machetes and zombie knives every day with the intent of killing one another, because Leighton Cole had some people liked Leighton, other people didn't. And the reason I say that, Woodrow is no different to a place called Ely in South Wales, and I'd urge you to come and just put it in Google and you'll find out a little bit about Ely. So Ely, there was a road traffic collision, led that to 2 days of unrest, cars being burnt, houses being burnt down, bricks being put through windows, and we were, and I genuinely mean this, we were that close to going into serious disorder in Woodrow. And you're probably sitting there going, and, well, that don't involve me because you're here around health and wellbeing. And I've gone through a journey myself with this. So I've traditionally, as a cop, jailed burglars and drug dealers. That's what I get paid to do. And from some of the work around the priority neighbourhood development, there is a massive correlation around areas that struggle with crime and disorder and health inequality. And I'm going to give you some figures. So in the last 3 years, there's been a 200% increase in crime in Woodrow. There has been a 366% increase in violence with injury offences in Woodrow. There has been a 200% increase in possession of weapon offences within Woodrow. And then I sat in that room and realised I've been looking at this all right. I can go and lock these people up tomorrow and can put them in jail after 3 years for the court case, and then they're going to get out within 3 weeks, and they're still living in poverty. And what I realised is a crime is a consequence of health inequalities. It's a consequence of distant GP services, distant commissioning around drug misuse, distant support around people that are struggling with mental health. Families that have financial burdens and are struggling to feed their children every day. We are in 2026, and how can a child go to school and not be able to eat? And then that leads to an increase in domestic abuse, but generally speaking, the female party will struggle to leave that relationship because they are subject to financial constraints and would rather suffer the abuse and violence and protect their children within a chaotic environment, which ultimately costs us millions of pounds every year when we take these children into care. And that is the starting point of the Woodrow project. We have gone through a massive journey in Woodrow, and we now have a wellbeing hub where people can drop in at any point and have a conversation with agencies. And if you're sat here thinking, that's not for me, it can be for anyone. We have animal food banks, Citizen Advice Bureau, domestic abuse charities, clothing banks, police services, local housing providers that are all using that as a hub. The next step, in my view, is around the third parties. What I didn't realise is the amount of really passionate, good people that I didn't even know existed, that will give you time, effort, capability and capacity to deliver these projects, and involves a leap of faith. And the leap of faith is we give them a load of cash. We give them no barriers around how they spend that cash. And the only objective is to make that area look and feel better. And that is starting to show really, really quick results. A victim of DA abuse has provided disclosure to a charity, which then come to a police officer. The offender's been arrested and been safeguarded. People providing this intelligence of where people are storing drugs or using weapons, where we can do targeted interventions and safeguarding support. An area that we are doing multi-agency walkabouts. It's not quite where I want it to be, where police officers, housing officers, community safety partners, environmental services, third parties and residents will walk the Woodrow estate and go, that's not acceptable, that fridge and that piece of waste piece of grass isn't acceptable, the graffiti on the shutters isn't acceptable, the fact that this resident can't access a GP appointment isn't acceptable. And that's the benefit of doing a service that isn't strategic down. It's about listening to that community voice and then doing something about it. And my appeal to you today is, when we are commissioning services, before you press that button and do it, just consider whether you've spoken to that person that lives on that estate who needs that service, and whether what you're commissioning would achieve what you're aiming to achieve. Because what I'm seeing for the last 12 months is millions and millions of pounds being wasted, where if we was to use it slightly better and collectively and use the third party slightly better, you would save yourself millions and millions of pounds. But more importantly, behind all this is my compassionate side. A lady that's suffering domestic abuse won't be killed or seriously injured. A child that is currently in poverty and not eating will now be able to eat. A person who's struggling with anxiety and depression can seek that early support and won't be detained under the Mental Health Act and tying up a hospital bed. A person who's considering jumping off the A448 suicide bridge in Redditch with early intervention doesn't make that decision, which involves hours of road closures and frontline officers being subject to traumatic events. And so, although this focus is on Woodrow, where you do this properly, it has a ripple effect. So like dropping a little stone into a pond, and that middle bit is Woodrow, but that ripple effect across that community and wider community and districts and counties and the Midlands area can be seen, and those tangible benefits are there. And so I have taken a very different approach, and with policing there's always times where we need to do enforcement. What I've learned from this is actually prevention and working together and doing things together will lead to more positive outcomes for that community, but also will leave that community standing on their own 2 feet to resolve their own problems, and something that I'm really keen as part of my legacy to leave with Woodrow area in Redditch. Thank you.
Thank you, Inspector Richfield and Elizabeth Griffiths. It's really, really good and heartening to listen to all these. I was just going to ask Elizabeth that can you give some real-time examples, but Inspector Richfield has just given those real-life examples there, and which is just heartening and eye-opener for us to see. But Woodrow is not possibly the only area. That's, I think, a good story, and as you mentioned, we need to identify those gaps and create that ripple effect, isn't it? And it's also important that what you have mentioned there, that when we commission services, we have to be mindful that they're outcome focused, because we waste millions and millions of pounds, but without actually looking at it, or maybe sometimes not able to foresee that how it is going to be looking in long run. But so thank you for that update, and let's take some thoughts and questions. Councillor Bowen, yes.
Thank you, Chair. So for many years I worked with young offenders and vulnerable families, and I'm familiar with many of the scenarios that you describe. I would slightly, not really disagree, but I think clarify one of the things that you said, which is that health disparities and poverty do not cause crime. More, they are symptomatic of the same underlying problem. And that is decades of a lack of understanding of and attention to a community that has been ignored and dismissed and sneered at and condemned by people who should have known better. And I really welcome your comments about the commissioning of services, in that when we commission services, it should be based on a real understanding, backed up with evidence, and most important of all, actually listening to the people in that community, what they want and what they need, rather than what I would say has been almost the traditional approach of that top-down, this is what you need. And then scratching our heads in wonder as it fails to work. So I really appreciate what you said today, and it's refreshing to hear. And inside I was just going, finally. So thank you for what you've said, and I fully endorse it.
Thank you, Justin. And I've got Councillor Zoe Cock. You are elected member from Redditch, isn't it? I know how strongly you feel about it.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Richard. I'm County Councillor for Redditch South, which is just up from Woodrow. It's really good to hear what you're doing at Woodrow. My children went to school when they were at middle school at Dingleside, which is now a housing estate. And I know a lot of people on Woodrow. Two things. The mental health issue isn't just confined to the people who have a problem. It's also confined to the ones that are causing the problems too. And I think that is also a really big issue. And my second point is I have a lot of time for our community officer, and whenever she's about, I'm out there with her. But she's on her own. And where I am, in Oakenshaw, we do have one deprived area, and also we have, it's very full of woods and full of spinneys. So a lot of dog walkers, a lot of people walking. It's a lovely area to get out in. And now people are afraid at the moment, not at night, but in the day, to go out. So I have asked our community officer if she'll come on a few walks with me so she can see where people are walking. But obviously she's on her own, and I'm not sure if it's true, but the hours have been cut for the PCOs. So she's got a big area to cover. So I wonder if that's an area that could be looked at as well. I know funding is a problem, but if we could look at a few more PCOs or up their hours so they're more visible than what they are at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you. Ellen, did you want to come in?
Well, thank you so much for what you've shared. Really inspiring and fantastic to hear about the work you're doing. I was familiar with the really sad story you shared, that it's really tragic. And I think whilst really sad, it does bring it to life and really focus the minds, doesn't it? So thank you for sharing that in the way that you did. I know you were focusing quite heavily on the commissioning side, but just from a provider perspective, I suppose one thing I picked up in your description of some of the conversations and the feedback you had from the community did worry me a little bit, that you said there was a reflection there's no mental health services in Redditch. There is a lot of mental health services in Redditch. I've visited Redditch myself. I know where you're talking about with the bridge and where we've got the crisis team, and increasingly we do home treatment intensive support now as an option. So it did make me reflect, is there something about how we're communicating and sharing what those offers are to the population? So if that's something it'd be useful to pick up outside of the meeting, I'm very happy to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Chair, can I just come in here? So 2 points. First of all, around the council, we do have resources. We're £300 £1 million organisation. I think the challenge around PCSO hours was a budgetary constraint around some of the government funding formula, but resources can be flexed and moved, and something I'll talk to you about afterwards. In terms of the commissioning, I think there's 2 points to pick out. One is a massive distrust around going into buildings. That was picked up by all organisations, including policing. So they would say to me, there's no officers, and I've increased the officer for Woodrow from 1 to 3, PCSOs 1 to 3. So I've ultimately put loads of resource into that area, so I feel that pain. What came out of that was how we're doing it and how we're advertising it. So with the Wellbeing Hub, I'd encourage, if there's an opportunity to put mental health services into that Wellbeing Hub, I think that will open up a gateway for you. Something we've done within policing, and we're now getting more reports that we've ever had, and that's just around a subtle change. And please don't take from this I'm criticising any particular organisation around the commissioning. What I'm saying is actually it's about understanding that community, and I would say that community is particularly hard to break down around that trust and confidence piece.
Thank you, Inspector. That's really useful. Lisa, you wanted to come in?
Yeah, I think first, thanks, Rich. That was absolutely superb, and Elizabeth. And, you know, I'm really proud of the whole team that are leading on the priority neighbourhood development work. We're getting a real reputation for it nationally, in fact, internationally, and that's great to see. I remain sceptical, however, because we sit in this room a lot talking about listening to communities, investing in communities, I still don't see a major system-wide shift towards it, if I'm honest. I know we bang on about it. I know we really do. And that's because we believe in it, because we've seen the results. Investment is a difficult thing to talk about at the moment, because all of our backs are against the wall financially. But if you take our evaluation of Westlands, for example, there is no way on earth we would have achieved the reduction in hospital admissions, the reduction in children in need social care referrals with interventionist, top-down approaches. And it comes back to something that Councillor Bowen talked about, is trust in communities. And, you know, I myself grew up in North Liverpool in a housing estate that was sneered at. As you said, Councillor Bowen, it was considered a no-go area by many people, and sometimes for good reason. But there was people in that community, just like there is in Westlands, just like there is in Woodrow, just like there is all over this county, that have a level of understanding of what's needed in that community than we could ever reasonably gain. So I think, you know, we really need to start putting specific challenges to ourselves as a system about upping our investment in these communities, not just of money, but of trust. Because to invest money in a community, and as Rich said, write out a cheque and say to the residents and the voluntary sector groups and the other people that live and work there, here, spend that money to improve health and well-being. That takes a big leap of faith. But I've never known it not pay off in my whole career. So I think there's a period of reflection for us all about how much are we talking about this and how much as a system are we doing it. You know, we are, I think, an area and a system that is way further on than many other areas. But we must never be complacent. What more can we challenge ourselves with? Neighbourhood health represents a great opportunity. LGR, local government reorganisation, represents a real opportunity. Because that will leave us with no choice as to the effort we have to put in to keep communities engaged and being listened to and involved in the work that we develop.
Yeah, thanks. I spent quite a lot of time listening there and taking on board what you'd said in the conversation and things. I think it's fantastic is the wrong word, but a strong case study for us all to reflect on, or set of case studies about where we are now and where we're going. There's a theme in today's agenda about neighbourhood health. I think what you've described really is the essence of neighbourhood health. It's about understanding communities, listening to them. It's about wellbeing centres. You know, in the government 10-year plan, they talk about a neighbourhood health centre in every community. I think what you've described there is a neighbourhood health centre. You know, so we need to build upon that and make the most of that. And it also, I mean, it's consistent with strategic commissioning as well. I think the challenge you've given us there is consistent with the concept of strategic commissioning, which for us, you know, we are, the ICB is now a £5 billion organisation in terms of our commissioning power. It's about allocating resources to the right areas, not making decisions on what that commissioning is, but actually co-producing with the communities, listening to the communities, looking at the data, you know, starting from where you began there, Lisa, and approaching it very much in that way. So, yeah, really, really timely kind of opportunity to reflect on our whole approach to this. So thank you for sharing those thoughts.
Thank you, David.
Chair, just David, just an offer, and it's completely up to you. I'd welcome you to come to Woodrow one day, come to the Wellbeing Hub, and then that might open up your eyes around, we'll knock some doors, speak to some residents around their feelings around access to services, and I think that might provide an insight that you may need in terms of the current work you're doing. But that's an offer if should you wish to take it.
Well, there's so much in there. It was wonderful, both of you, in terms of the process, but also the gritty reality, but the positive within it as well. And it was lovely to hear that. I think I just wanted to say, as someone who's here to speak from the voluntary sector's view as well, when we talk about sharpening up commissioning and thinking far more about local, that doesn't just apply to the ICB, to local authorities, it applies to us. Certainly the bigger voluntary sector agencies, we sometimes can be guilty of, we'll sit in our building, we want you to come to us. And we're finding it really powerful to come alongside this. We're loving being in Woodrow. But I want to go back to something, Elizabeth, you said in your talk about how each community remains unique. I was at another public health organised meeting a couple of months ago in Wynyates. Neighbour, effectively, you looked at the raw data, you'd have thought, same issues, same problems, QED, same solutions. But that room, very, very different. And that's, I understand it's really difficult in terms of the ICB and how do you deal with that? And it is about trust, it's about listening. I have a project in Redditch at the moment which I love, and I said to the people on that project when they went in there, I want you to break the rules. And what I meant by that is, like any organisation, we have handbooks and you can do this, you can't do that. And I said, every time you find that our rules say no, but you feel you want to do something, don't just take no. Come back to me and we'll see what we can do. And I think that's what I'd urge everybody in this room to do. It is about giving trust. It's about giving budget holders permission. It's about giving them permission to take risk. And that's really, really difficult because all of us are accountable to somebody. And when you hang on to the accountability, but you give control over the solution to somebody else, you are exposing yourself. But again, it comes back to what you said, Lisa. When you do it, 90 times out of 100, probably more, the results are so worth it. So just, be brave, be a bit bonkers, use the data, and just go for it.
I wasn't, but I will. All right. And only because I've got to say, I worked in the Woodrow 40 years ago. Right. Bit of a shock coming from Ross-on-Wye, I've got to say. Right. And if you're managing to make some difference, I take my hat off to you, to be quite honest with you. Because I've heard about people making a difference over those 40 years, but nobody has actually succeeded. And one of my issues would be, we have been at this, I've sat in meetings and had similar presentations 20 years ago, albeit a different list of names sometimes. And in that is, have we looked at what we did in the past and actually evaluated? Some names aren't on that list, for example. So do we have an exit strategy? If they're no longer priority neighbourhood areas, do we have an exit strategy from investing in them? Why aren't they on that list anymore? Is it you've changed the data that you're collecting, your data sets, so they drop off it? So that's one thing. And then the other thing I would say is, having been in the job I'm in now with Health Watch and having sort of, talked about how you design services and what have you, just picking up on your mental health observations, or I can tell you from a Health Watch perspective, and I don't usually hand plaudits to the Health and Care Trust, but actually the mental health service they provide in Redditch for people with serious and enduring mental health services is certainly for Worcestershire top of the class, isn't it? With assertive outreach work, we were really impressed when we went to look at it in the light of the Nottinghamshire experience. So how you then have got to square that with, because the reality is, yes, the mental health facility, inpatient facility in Redditch closed last summer. Rightly so, because what I was going to say is, the Redditch patients were the minority of patients in there, and if you were a Redditch patient, you were more likely to end up in a place at, say, Worcester or even Herefordshire, because it's where the vacancy is at the time that you need it. So, squaring that circle of actually carrying out, designing a stroke system that meets everybody's needs within the budget and the capacity resources they've got is really difficult. So there's an element of making sure that's properly communicated and not raising expectation. Focus on the community pharmacy and the advantage of that, and those sort of issues I would suggest, where it's perhaps reasonable to deliver something. I know you want to come back at me, don't you?
Thank you.
Oh, yes. No, not back at you. I agree with you. And I think you're absolutely right. If, excuse me, if you talk to people in areas like Winyates, Woodrow, Westlands, etc., where I was brought up, over the years, they'll be able to tell you about people who came in with clipboards and did a project. Often what they did is they collected, they had some focus groups, they maybe put a couple of grants in, and then that was it. And there's a good reason for that. And it's what I referred to earlier. Because still today, when we talk about health, we don't talk about housing, we don't talk about education, we don't talk about crime, we talk about wards, we talk about practices, we talk about services. Still, the main course of health, the main course is what we are going to do to people. It's about the conditions we live with, not the conditions we live in. Tap in health into BBC or Google, and you'll get lots of stories about the NHS. Yet clinical factors only account for 20% of health outcomes anywhere in the world. 20%. The other 80% is down to social factors. But we still, when we think of health, we think about health services. So that's why, while community development is the side salad as opposed to the main course, this is why we get transient work. This is why we don't get permanency. But we've been at this for 3 years now. And the team was doing it before then, but we've been at it with gusto for 3 years. The Priority Neighbourhood Development Programme is at least 2.5 years old now. And this is our main course now. So if you take an area that you, for example, an example of the areas you mentioned which are not on the list anymore, one of those areas, Westlands in Droitwich, and we all know what happened there. But Westlands isn't on the list anymore, and the main work, the intensive work that we did in Westlands isn't carrying on in the same intensity, but we're still there. We're still going all the time. We're still in touch with the Wellbeing Hub there. Because you're right, Simon, this work needs to be sustained. You don't go in, fix something and then move out. Instead, you need to build this over time with investment and trust. But until, as a country, we start to see health as being driven by social factors as opposed to clinical factors. Clinical factors are important, but until we move out of that mindset where everything's about services, then we won't make progress on this. Here, end of the lesson. Sorry.
Thank you, Lisa. So thank you both for this update, and thank you, Inspector, for giving us all that information and sharing those stories. And it's really good to know your empathetic approach towards all what you're doing there. Thank you. So moving on agenda, next we have is neighbourhood health in Worcestershire update, and can I invite Ellen Rowe to...
Well, I feel a bit like Lisa introduced her report saying this might be a bit of a kind of... we've sort of bookended the main show, I feel, Lisa, haven't we? Slightly technical, possibly not the most exciting report you've ever had, but I think talks to a really exciting topic. So yes, we wanted to just provide an update on progress, really. So it's provided for information, for assurance. I'm not going to run through all of what we've put in the report because I'll assume that members have had a chance to read it. But I will just pluck out a couple of things in terms of the progress that we've been making. So this continues the conversation that we started with the November update on neighbourhood health. We've obviously had the workshop as well. So it's just really providing an update and keeping members in touch with progress. So I think one thing just to flag as well is that I think it's gone slightly quiet as well now, actually, even on promising the guidance. But for a while, we kept expecting guidance. We lived in anticipation. It will be next week, they said. And it was next week, and then it was next week, and then it was next week again for many, many weeks. And I think now it looks like there probably isn't going to be some sort of big fanfare and piece of national guidance. And in a way, I think there's a little bit of me that possibly feels quite thankful for that, because I think it could have been a bit diversionary. And I think we actually, as we've heard already today, hold many of the tools already in our toolbox that could enable us to progress better joined up care in place, which is really all this agenda is talking to, and is the continuation of a journey we've been on for a while with varying degrees of success in different areas, of course. So this, as I said, is just a reflection of where we're at, pulling together a plan, continuing to have conversations in the design phase, but whilst recognising, I think, having been relatively recently joined Worcestershire, a lot has already happened in Worcestershire. We're absolutely not starting from ground zero with this. There are lots of brilliant examples going on already, district collaboratives, work we've heard about with public health working with primary care, lots of things going on already. So it's really just continuing to build on the journey that the system has already been on. So in terms of next steps then, we do plan to do some more workshops during this year as we start to really think at the crunchy end of what does this mean to work differently. And I think it builds on some of the themes you've heard today, really from the beginning understanding the data, understanding the outcomes frameworks, understanding local priorities, and not just through the data lens but through engagement and voice of people living in local areas, and thinking about how we can organise ourselves more effectively to support delivery at neighbourhood level. And some of that is quite focused on how we maybe reorganise ourselves more effectively within the NHS, thinking about workforce, estate, digital. And then I think there's a really significant piece of this about how we work together then at a system and within the community. So we're probably running both of those tracks at the same time. So yeah, that's really the things I wanted to draw your attention to today, and obviously happy to take any questions on the paper or the work. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. Any questions, any thoughts? Yes, David. Thank you.
It's not a question, it's really just a reflection on Ellen's point about national guidance and in some ways the dangers of national guidance, because we know Woodrow is very different from Broadway. Westlands is very different from the centre of Worcester. Malvern's very different from Tenbury, let alone when we think, for me in my new role across the cluster, Coventry city centre to the border of Herefordshire and Kington. National guidance is never going to accommodate all of those variables. So I think in some ways, thinner, later national guidance that enables us to get on with what's right for our own populations and then retrofit some of the things we have to do, because we are still a national health service at the end of the day. That we still need to remember the N in national health service for us. But I think I welcome and share Ellen's view on the benefits of national guidance.
Yes, Neil, thank you.
Again, it's great to come along this journey with Ellen as part of the delivery forum group, isn't it, for that one? But actually, just to reassure everyone in the room that the passion that's coming from clinical directors, the enthusiasm in terms of trying to move all this forward is very much still there. And I think the Neighbour Health Delivery Framework commissioned through the ICB last year is actually meaning we're doing that dual track approach that Ellen talked about. We are super keen to continue to work on these priority neighbourhoods and the slightly and the other priority neighbourhoods that we've been given as PCNs. And I think it's the reassurance that things are definitely happening and still enthusiastic despite this lack of lack of national framework. The uncertainty of that we can work with, but building relationships for our patients is very much at the heart of what we're continuing to do.
Thank you. Sarah Speck, so I work for Worcestershire Acute. Just want to echo that comment, actually. I mean, this is something that feels different, and it feels like we are standing shoulder to shoulder on this, looking at different ways of sort of moving forward, to the point where if you were to walk into the room, I think, on a delivery group meeting, you wouldn't actually know who worked for which organisation, which I think is really important. I think the thing that it's making me feel, though, within the Acute Trust and with my hospital colleagues, is we start thinking about interface working, and I think that speaks to your point, Lisa, about we look at working across pathways and services differently and the interface between different organisations. Whereas I think the next step for us, and this is a leap of faith, is working differently together completely, you know, and working outside of those boundaries. And I think to your point, Chris, use the data, yeah, but we've got to be brave now and actually know exactly that we're going to do the right thing by doing the right thing. So I think there's some real opportunity here, and the energy that I think we're all bringing to it now is coming. I'm thrilled to be here again, because although we're kind of showing progress on how we're about to deliver, it feels like a very different delivery mechanism that we're using now. Even the fact they call it delivery mechanism isn't right, is it? Feels a bit like a social movement to me. So I think if we can carry on with that energy, then you'll start to feel the difference. And I'd love to come out to Woodrow, actually, and come and see and meet with people and sort of understand things from different perspectives. We're doing that a lot at the moment when we're looking at things within the hospital, but actually going out and doing things when people like you give great examples of the work that you're doing. I think there's a lot we could do to support you.
So you wanted to come in? No, sorry. Okay. Any other thoughts on this? Yeah.
Just one point is, given my rant earlier about the importance of housing, environment, education, employment to health, it does worry me, and this isn't a Worcestershire issue, it's a national one, about the link up between local government reorganisation and neighbourhood health. Is it in my job as a DPH, I constantly straddle two worlds, and you know, I'll meet with David and NHS colleagues more than I meet with some council colleagues, but I'm obviously based in local government. So I hope that we can bring those two major reforms or major initiatives together into one conversation at some point, because, you know, what, for example, Councillor Bowen and his teams do around children and young people in the council will have a direct effect on NHS children's services and vice versa. We all know about the codependency. So it'd be great, wouldn't it, if we could join those conversations up a little bit more going forward.
I just want to echo that, and a great example of that is on the corporate parenting board, where, you know, literally just last month we've joined up Anchor and the fostering service to create a whole new way of working in the developing the therapeutic foster homes. And it's that kind of, you know, literally bringing everything together which is needed. So I totally echo what you said.
Yeah, I wasn't going to say anything, but actually you've prompted me, Lisa, to move it. Not just the LGR, but I'm very aware that there is a third leg to this health stool, which we've talked about, which is the voluntary sector, the third parties. And it's really, it's a reassurance, I suppose, and just a little bit of a warning in a sense. The reassurance is that Tanya and Sarah have been really good. They've kept me in the loop and sort of said, look, you know, we will get you involved, but there's some internal stuff that needs to be sorted first. And I think that's brilliant. And I know when I look at those three challenges that have been laid down in the 10-year plan for the NHS, the going local and the digital people get. It's the prevention that scares people, because that's what they don't know. It's the non-medical bit of territory. And a lot of the focus is at the moment to get stuff out of hospitals into community, and I think that will be a very key part of it. But the real win is in the prevention, and I don't think you can do the prevention until people like us, who quite frankly do life, are in that room. But we recognise it's got to be the right time. But then when we're in there, we've got to be in there properly, not one or two token people. And the heart of what I'm hearing is that is not the plan. The plan is to get us in there properly, and to really try and do this differently. Because we all know there's a lot of cynicism, isn't there? When we talk about preventing bad health, people say, yeah, I've been trying to do that for 30 years, 40 years, 50 years. It does feel slightly different this time. And I think we're getting the structure to do it. So yes, we're watching carefully, but we're ready to come in as soon as we can add value, I think is what I would say.
Thank you, Chris. I also want to just mention same thing, what David has said about national framework and guidelines, or Sarah has mentioned. I guess in this process, we also get the opportunity not to build on those national framework and guidelines just by default, but we are brave enough to look at what hasn't worked in the past and what will work in today's context. So I think this process should give us that opportunity. And you mentioned about voluntary sectors, of course. That's really, really important, and that this will all link in with the priority neighbourhood. For example, mental health services in Redditch. So there's a lot of work going on, but here are some residents or people who don't know what's available around them. So I think in the wellbeing hubs, and that information sharing is really important. And public health, I mean, I will again say that the team is really, really motivated, and they are doing so much, and so much of hard work is going on, and everyone's contribution. And it looks like all the stakeholders, partners, all the members who sit here are on board. And, we are really looking forward to support each other so that we can do it differently this time, isn't it? Thank you. Thank you, Ellen, for giving us update and bringing everyone up to speed, and we look forward for further workshops. Thank you. Move on to agenda is Better Care Fund update, and we have got David to present that. Thank you.
I like the way Ellen said you bookended the main item, but we've really saved the best for last. So the Better Care Fund, our favourite topic, isn't it? So it won't have escaped your attention that I am neither Simon Trickett nor Mark Fitton, who were named on the agenda, or the writers of the report. So bear with me on this one. I know a bit about the Better Care Fund, but not the level of depth that my esteemed colleagues do. So what I'll do is just talk through the kind of key features of what this paper is about. And as on previous occasions, we know that the submission deadlines for the Better Care Fund, the national reporting submissions, and the timing of Health and Wellbeing Board meetings don't align. It's just a fact of life, so we have to be pragmatic in how we get Health and Wellbeing Board input to said submissions. And our approach has previously been for Health and Wellbeing Board to delegate authority to ISOG, the Integrated Care Executive Officers Group, to sign off those submissions, send them in, and then report to the Health and Wellbeing Board on progress. And that's what this report is. It covers the submissions for Q2 and Q3. It provides a brief update on DFG funding, and it provides a brief update on the financial position of the Better Care Fund. From my perspective, reading through the report and what I know about the Better Care Fund, no major issues to report to the Health and Wellbeing Board. Performance generally remains on track, with the exception of one indicator where there are it's tracking behind the target, but I am absolutely sure that there will be teams doing their best to come up with recovery plans to get that indicator back on track. And importantly, the fund is financially stable as well. So that's the key reflective bit on this particular paper. The prospective bit on this particular paper is it starts to talk about the 26-27 Better Care Fund, and I think, Lisa, you mentioned it just now, that it's kind of changing going forward. The government is using the Better Care Fund to align to the Neighbourhood Health Programme more directly. When you read through it, though, I don't know whether others feel. It doesn't feel like it will be that different for us in Worcestershire, because we already have quite good alignment to the types of services that will be part of a better care fund that will drive neighbourhood health. So my personal view is, yes, there is going to be a different sort of set of national guidance on future Better Care Fund, but it won't feel that much different for us locally, because I think we're already quite aligned. So the timelines for that development is set out. The report, it covers that on paragraph 28. The submission for the next kind of iteration of our work on the Better Care Fund is the 19th of May, which, if anybody's looked in their future diaries, is the date of the next Health and Wellbeing Board. So again, we're not going to be on the cycle which makes that work, so we will be looking at the same approach for delegating to ISOG and retrospective reporting and approval, if that's okay. Happy to take any questions, but as I say, I am by no means the expert on this particular topic.
Thank you, David. Neither I don't have much information, but I try to understand from Mark as we can. Any thoughts on this? Any questions, please? Thank you. Lisa, did you want to say anything on how it is going to look like for us? We don't know. I think Mark will give us more information later.
Oh, I think it's going to be awesome.
Yeah. Okay. What I'm going to do, just mention the future meeting date we have on 19th of May. And then we have some development meetings, which is on 7th of July, the next one. Any other business before we call it a day? Yes.
Tickets for the Withall Fun Run are on sale online. Coming up in June, I expect to see you all there. You always ask the difficult questions, don't you? That's a good excuse, I suppose, yeah. It's 23rd of June, and I think, 7th of June. 7th of June. So you can come and get a PB on a flat, fast route. Yeah, but please do come along. Even if you don't want to run, come and join in. It's a brilliant day and a big celebration, not just of running, but of community and public health. So come along.
Thank you. Yes, Sam, so you wanted to come in.
I'm giving Lisa the eye. We've also got the DPH annual report.
The DPH annual report is also on sale in the foyer.
I just thought, we usually bring the DPH annual report to Health and Wellbeing Board members, but it wasn't proofed and published in time to meet the agenda pack. If we wait till the next meeting, it will be a few months away. It's circulating all the positive work that we've actually talked about across the last 4 meetings and beyond. So I think we've covered a lot of the content in conversations today and in previous meetings. If members are okay, we'll circulate it via email rather than bringing it to a future agenda.
I think most of you are in it, actually. Yeah, in a few photos. So yeah, check it out. And thank you to the team that put it together, all the graphic design and everything. It looks really nice. So have a look when it comes in.
Thank you, and thank you all for your time today and contributions. And we'll see you next time. Thank you.